Hello and welcome to what promises to be a very, very special discussion, a lovely chat with somebody who's known very well in Goa as much as in the UK, the Right Honourable Keith Vaz, the longest serving member of Parliament from the British Asian community, somebody who's known, respected, and loved by Goans all over as their treasured son, who really implanted his wisdom and his political sagacity in the realms of Parliament. So we are here to have a wide-ranging discussion on a lot of subjects, and we'll start with Goa itself. Uh, and I'd just like to begin by asking you, what are the changes that you have witnessed in Goa during this phase of your life, and after presumably returning to India after a couple of years?
Goa is still Goa. So there is still a amazing feeling when you land at Dublin Airport and you get into the taxi or the car and you head through to South Goa. So that feeling remains. It is to do with your heart more than your mind.
Sure.
It's to do with the people that you meet. So it's always good to be here. And as you get to the end of your holiday, you think, I wish I had another month.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Dublin Airport. The irony is that international flights no longer land at the Dublin Airport and land at Mopa. But I can sense where you're coming from, because as somebody who's Goan roots, the word Dublin automatically comes out of your senses rather than the Mopa Airport. But if I can just seize this opportunity to touch a little bit about both these airports, and the fact that Goa is a very new swanky airport in Mopa, but there are a lot of South Goans who still have problems commuting and so on and so forth. Do you think this airport question has got to do more with distances than with identity and so on and so forth, that people feel closer to?
I've not used Mopar
Or yet?
yet, but I dropped my son there.
Sure.
I thought the roads were incredible. The best roads in Goa
Right.
are the roads to the airport.
Right.
And there were it was 4 o'clock in the morning, so there were very few cars on there. But I think that this great state can have two functioning, thriving airports.
Right.
And I'm sorry that the direct flights are not coming to Dublin, because I think we need to save Dublin. We need to make sure it continues with its heritage and tradition.
Right.
And of course, in the long run, if you live in the south, and I do, travelling all these distances couldn't be good for the environment. It's much better to live relatively near the airport. And if you look at the map of Goa, Mopar is right at the top, and therefore you have to travel long distances.
Right.
So I understand why another airport has been created in a different part of the state, but I don't think that we should preferentiate one over the other.
Right.
I'd like to see Dublin continue to support South Goa and continue to be thriving and vibrant.
I'd like to quickly get into the UK-Goa connection, the people connection, which is getting stronger and stronger as days go by. But this discussion needs to be a little nuanced, because on one side, of course, there are many Indians, many Goans especially, who've gone and done very well in the realm of politics and social service. And we just see the number of MPs, and I think you and your sister are probably the only brothers sibling duo who've been in Parliament. And of course, there are other Goans also who've been in Parliament. So there's one, class, for lack of a better word, right now, which has gone and established themselves and contributed a lot, been a part of policy making decisions, and been in business and so on and so forth. On the other hand, pre-Brexit, we saw this huge influx of Portuguese Goans with the red Portuguese passport getting into England without even probably knowing a word of Portuguese or having ever visited Portugal. Okay, and but of course, as things were, they moved in there. And while we wish the best to everybody who makes that decision, because very often it's an economic decision rather than, than any other decision, and they move there to take advantage of whatever the circumstances are, and make a better life for themselves and their families actually. In spite of they not having the best of lives, because many of them had much better lives in Goa, but go and suffer, and as one politician very famously said, they clean toilets, but I think that was a little under the belt because they go and do many more things than that. But leaving that aside, I'm just trying to figure out that there are these two kinds, and of course there are places in Swindon, in Wembley, and others that are completely fully. I just wanted to kind of not take it as a question, but just as a discussion on the two contrasting kinds of Goans who've been there, and what's been the impact of both these sides, as it were.
Sure. This is a very important discussion point.
Yes, yes.
And can I say, without hesitation, that the Goan community has thrived in the UK, and the UK is a better country because of the Goan community. When I was elected to Parliament in 1987, I was, of course, the first person of Goan origin, so really a grandson of Goa rather than a son. There are now 90 British Asian MPs, 4 in 87 to 90, which is a massive number.
Right.
Then I used to very much concentrate on the whole of the community. It's been good as the years have gone on, and other people from other parts of India have been elected, which means I can talk more about Goa. I think Brexit has been a disaster for the United Kingdom. This is a country that should be growing stronger and stronger. It's got the best financial services in the world. Its education is second to none. It's got the best health service with the NHS. So much was going for Britain until that referendum. And actually people, I think, need a choice now to go back and have another referendum. I think we've had 2016 now, next year will be 10 years since the referendum.
Right.
It's been a rocky period in British history. 5 prime ministers during that period,
Right. Yes.
a massive change of government. I think that there is this view that you have to accept everything as if it's written in stone. And although nobody likes change, like I don't like the fact that we have to go to Mopar rather than Double M, you have to accept it.
Right.
And you have to see, how's it gone? It's gone badly. Okay? And therefore we need to review it, and you have a
Could you elaborate on this, the fact that it's gone badly? Why do you say so with such emphasis? What's really gone wrong?
Well, because trading with Europe was critical for the United Kingdom. Over half our exports went to the European Union. I was talking to a businessman who says every time he tries to export to France, he has to fill in so many forms, so many regulations.
Right.
But the skills of the people who came, and I signed under the authority of Tony Blair the enlargement agreement that brought in Poland and Hungary and Czech Republic and 8 other countries. Romania as well, all those countries. I spent, as Tony Blair made me go and be friends with the new countries,
Right.
so I travelled to 52 countries in 52 weeks to try and make sure they understand that we were their friends. They're all in and we're out. So they're taking advantage of the single market.
That's right.
We saw Europe as being the third force, the great United States with their economy, the Soviet Union on the other side with its satellite states, and then the EU, 500 million people. We've swapped that 500 million people. It was supposed to be for trade deals with the rest of the world, but it never happened. So I think we should review it. And I would like to see us have another referendum.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that
an election fought only on this point. Well, has Brexit worked on? Coming to Goan's pre-Brexit and post-Brexit, how has life changed for those who've entered the UK post-Brexit?
Well, if you entered the UK just once, even for a short period of time, before the cut-off date, you could apply for what's called pre-settlement.
Right.
After Brexit date, you can't. You have to obtain your Portuguese passport. If you obtain your Portuguese passport, you can't come and settle in the UK. You can, of course, visit as an EU citizen,
Mm.
but you can't settle. A lot of Goans are choosing to go to Dublin,
That's right. Yes.
Dublin to Dublin,
Right.
where they can settle,
Mm.
and eventually, if they get the jobs, they can actually come to the United Kingdom. That's what's cut off our skills. We need people, skilled people in certain industries.
Can't a Goan with a Portuguese passport enter UK now and apply for a pre-settled status?
A Goan can, if they satisfy the conditions,
Right.
because you can apply out of time.
Mm.
There's no
Mm.
problem with that,
Mm.
except that the Home Office is an organisation that takes a very long time to
Sure.
make decisions. Don't forget, it's not just about Goa, it's Daman and Diu as well.
That's right. Correct.
And so if you go to Daman and Diu, as I have been many times, you'll find that the same thing is happening here.
Mm.
Houses are unattended, people have gone, the brain drain to some extent has happened. And lots of people from Daman and Diu want to bring in their relatives and they can't,
Right.
simply because the rules have changed. But you can always
Does this apply to descendants, direct descendants of people who entered pre-Brexit?
Every case is different, but the
Right.
general rule
Right.
is make sure you look at the Home Office website and make sure you get good advice. There are lots of agents. Earlier this week, I went to meet the Portuguese Consul General because the last time I was here, people were very worried. It was a long process, delays were ongoing.
Right.
And she reassured me. She said, there isn't a wait.
Mm.
If you apply to get a passport today, you will get your appointment in 3 days, provided all your papers are in order.
Right.
And I think that matters greatly. But Brexit has not been successful, and we're losing people to Ireland. Some will go to Portugal. I'll tell you where the complication lies. We recently had disorders in Leicester,
That's right. Yes.
and a couple of them who originate from Daman were arrested and convicted of a criminal offence. Only a very few, a tiny few. But because of the law, if you have been sentenced to given a sentence of more than 12 months, you can be deported to your country, your passport country.
Right.
So that means even though they've never lived in Portugal, having come all the way over, they have to go
That's
to,
very interesting.
they had to be deported to
Portugal. Right.
But this is a very small number.
Mm.
And I think there's general admission. It's not just about Portugal. There's a lot of people from Moldova who got Romanian passports and came into the UK. There's a lot of people from the colonies of Holland, Suriname and places like that have got Dutch passports and ended there. So the immigration debate will continue. If anyone needs any help or advice, we've set up a foundation,
Okay.
I have,
Okay.
where people can be signposted.
Right. Sticking to the immigration topic, and this is again another vast discussion, but we try to concise that as much as possible. You see, of course, UK has been home to so many immigrants, and it's growing. It's not just Goans, it's so many Indians and other Asians in so many countries. A huge melting pot. But at the same time, there is a big change happening. There is a feeling that a certain section of immigrants have literally taken over and imposing their beliefs and customs in there. So much so that while Britain retains its status as a welcoming country, but it's also facing controversies, backlashes, violence, which for and against the immigrant community there. So, in the sense that, would you agree that too much of immigration is also causing problems to the native British identity and its customs and traditions?
I'm for open borders.
Yeah.
But the answer is that there are lots of people in Britain who fear, and it is fear, stoked up by certain political parties, the arrival of a lot of immigrants.
Right.
And the reason this is happening is because Britain keeps declaring war on a lower level, not a formal declaration, supporting wars
Right.
in other countries. As a result of that, you get a mass number of people coming to your country. The involvement in Syria, the involvement in the Middle East,
That's right.
the involvement in Ukraine, Iraq, Afghanistan. I dealt with a lot of Afghani cases of people who literally climbed onto the aircraft as Biden announced
That's right.
that they were
We saw
withdrawing,
some images of
they
this.
were climbing on with their families.
Right, right.
And I dealt with many Afghani cases.
Mm.
They've all now been given settlement, by the way, because it happened so soon. So if you go to, this is a great thing about India. India doesn't go to war,
Correct.
with one exception.
Right.
Doesn't go to war with many countries,
Mm.
and it only does so when it's provoked.
Right.
The Western countries are always at war.
That's right. Correct. Either directly or indirectly.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
Exactly.
Mm.
And that's the problem for America.
Mm.
America can do it because people have the Atlantic Ocean to cross.
Right, right.
But it's quite easy to go from North Africa into Spain or France
Very easy,
and then
yes.
come to the UK.
Right, right, right. But is it for real that the violence that you see on the streets of London, sometimes it escalates a lot, and the whole this whole minority takeover that has happened there? I just wanted to get a sense of from as an outsider, is it overplayed or is it really serious?
It's totally overplayed.
Okay, okay,
There are one or two incidents
right,
that are, blown out of all proportion
Right.
to what goes on.
right, right.
Racism exists in every country in the world,
Mm.
and it has to be stamped out, of course.
Mm.
But where there is violence on races or religion, this is very rare. I mean, throughout the whole Middle East crisis, with the appalling attack of Hamas on the 7th of October
Yes.
last year
Mm.
to now, there have been masses of demonstrations, but very little violence. But I think it's all blown up. The community will tell you it's a very safe country to live, as safe as it is in Goa.
Right, right. What's very interesting here is that that a fellow Goan and a former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, pushed herself into a lot of controversies by taking a very open stand against migrants and immigration and pro-Palestinian protests as well. She had a problem with that as well. And that, of course, put her into a lot of controversies, and then finally she had to demit office. It's interesting that, another Goan, in a position of office took a radically different stand than you did. Just a comment or two on that.
Well, Suella stood against me in one of my
Yes,
elections,
yes.
as you know,
Yes.
and she was the most charming of opponents. She never mentioned immigration once. We had a cup of tea at Bobby's restaurant in Leicester, and we got on very well. And she said, "You're going to win anyway. This is my first seat, so I'm not going to win this seat, but I will win in the end." And actually, I like her personally.
Right.
I don't like her politics
Mm.
and the politics that's represented, because I think it's unnecessary. She was Home Secretary, and therefore she had the chance to sort out the Home Office,
Right.
which is still in a mess, by the way.
Right.
Illegal migration is occurring all the time, under her watch and under the watch of Home Secretaries since. So I don't understand why someone with that kind of very diverse background
Sure.
would take that position.
Sure.
However, she was running to be the leader of the Conservative Party,
Mm.
so she's entitled to take a position for her members. And I understand why she's taken that position. I don't agree with it. She's always been very nice and pleasant to me, and I think we've got on very well when I met her. But she's one of the very few Conservatives who've held their seat.
Right.
There is a suggestion she might go to another party, Reform.
Is that true?
Well, we don't know. We need to ask her. We
Okay.
need to get her onto the Herald YouTube program. Ask her those questions. But I like her as a person.
Just one minor controversial question. Why did you leave your Labour Party?
Well, I had served for 32 and a half years. I don't know how long you've been editor of the Herald. How many years?
Quite a few.
Tell me the number.
Close to a decade in bits and pieces.
Oh, a decade is nothing. You're a new boy. You've got another 20 years to go. So when you've done 32 and a half years, and you come out of Parliament, you do other things, like I obviously run my charity on diabetes. I have a radio program every week in London, and as well as that, I set up a foundation to help migrants, the Integration Foundation. I then decided to stand again because I was very angry about the Palestinian issue. And I felt when you get into Parliament with one of the major parties, you have to toe the line. And if you step out of the line, you get beaten down. there is an old saying, a joke about the difference between a Labour MP and a supermarket trolley. And they say that a supermarket trolley has a mind of its own.
Very interesting. But it's very interesting that it's interesting and refreshing as well that you flag the Palestinian issue.
I'm not Palestinian and I'm not Muslim.
I know that.
But I was born in Yemen.
Right.
And I think that there is unfairness. I am very supportive of the state of Israel.
Right.
I think a thriving state of Israel is vital. I condemn what happened on the 7th. But I also think there should be a homeland for the Palestinians. You can't simply go into somebody else's country and take over their houses, which is actually what happened in America.
Right.
We now have President Trump saying he wants to take over Canada and buy Greenland.
Yes, he said that. Yes.
I mean, what the?
Yeah. He's decided to send the forces. What the Trump?
And I think the Greenlanders are getting very worried because all there is at the moment is
Right.
snow and 57,000
Right.
people. We don't want this expansion.
Right.
We want to celebrate differences of cultures and religions and all that kind of thing. So I said 68 years of age, life expectancy 76, so I've got 8 years left before
Hope it's much more
I'm
than that.
called.
Yes.
And therefore, for the last election, I wanted to just be myself, say my own things, and I have differences on Brexit.
Sure.
The Labour Party's position is not to go back.
Mhm.
I'm to go back. The Labour Party's position is not to end the war. I'm stop the war, don't arm either side. So there are big differences, and I thought I would use this last election, called at the last minute, to do it. I know I've been blamed because they said the Labour Party didn't win because I stood, but that's
So be it,
politics.
yeah. Okay. Let's get the discussion again back to your roots at Goa. Obviously, Goa has seen large-scale land conversion and destruction. It's too visible not to know. One can't live in denial. Of course, we as journalists have investigated and looked at what's happened to the land, the laws that have really permitted or empowered people to convert land which they could not, which has led to a huge real estate lobby literally running and taking over Goa in many ways. Of course, there's a big battle going on, and there are activists and others on the streets and so on and so forth. You being a crusader for environment and having served in different positions to protect it there, do you feel that not enough is being spoken of or articulated both here in Goa and internationally by Goans abroad to ensure that this becomes a primary focus for improvement in Goa? Because with land we are losing identity, with identity we are losing heritage, with heritage we are losing culture. So at the end of the day, it's not just a land loss; it's a loss of much more than that. So on one hand, it's good to go abroad and make money, and at the same time, people are also moving out because they're
Yes.
getting less and less here.
Right.
So the issue is it's complex, but it's all joined at the hip, as it were. Just a few thoughts on what I just said.
I don't know about the specific issues about the change in ownership of land.
Yeah, but you're
I'm
aware
simply-
of the visible changes because you went to Kalangut, you went to Baga, you saw what was happening.
Yes.
And
Well, I'll tell you what I did see. I couldn't find Tabado because there were so many shops selling hats. Not that there's anything wrong with hat makers, but the fact is, of course, it gets very crowded up there. But there was a lot of people who were enjoying themselves. The beach that I used to go on to has changed, and that's a planning issue which people need to be aware of. The south is quite different. I'm only a tourist. In a sense, I only have an emotional stake in what's happening.
I just wanted to ask, from the time that you spent in Goa now, is the kind of the regret and the hurt at what's happening resonated with you ever through discussions?
It hasn't because nobody has raised it with me until
Right.
you have.
Sure.
And it's interesting
Mm.
that I think they raise with me global issues rather than specifically about
Right.
Goa.
Right.
I mean, you go to Martin's Corner, you go to the Bettelbatti Church, and those kinds of things for tourists. So you don't really know. I'm glad the bridges have been built, by the way.
Sure.
These are big improvements, which enable you to travel across. But I don't know specifically about those issues, and I'm keen to learn more.
Getting into Getting into another subject which you briefly touched upon, and it's very interesting. Look, the Goan diaspora is all over the world, and of course they have connects with their country. But should Goans, like the people in Gujarat do and others do, play a larger part in ensuring that people from their adopted countries see Goa as well, in the sense that Goans in UK can get more people from Britain to come to Goa. Of course, they do anyway, but other Goans in other parts of the country. How many Australians do we have coming in here? How many people from the Gulf come here to as visitors?
Absolutely.
How many people from Canada come in here?
So,
do you have a plan in mind?
I do, actually.
Where the diaspora can play a bigger part.
Yes, I think we don't do
Getting
enough.
tourists to go.
And you are absolutely right. If you go to the UK, there's a lot of Punjabi activity, a lot of Gujarati. Those are the two biggest.
Sure.
Punjabi and Gujarati.
Yeah.
The Gujaratis, of course, from Leicester, they have the biggest influence.
That's right.
And they are very proud of their home state. There's nothing wrong with being proud of your home state and being an Indian.
That's right.
Okay?
Correct.
I noticed at the end of the exposition event when the Shivalong Choir came, there was a rendering of how important it is to be an Indian.
That's right.
And the way in which Goans regard themselves as being Indians rather than Portuguese, for example, I think is really important to identity. I would like to see diaspora champions appointed in each of these countries, in Canada, in the UK, in Kuwait, in Abu Dhabi, in Australia, wherever Goans have gone, and there are more than 10,000. This should, in a sense, be a grassroots movement. I'd love it to be done by the government, but I haven't put this to the government, where people can do this job. They don't have to do it forever. You can have more than one. But getting together and saying, what are we going to do this year about promoting Goa? And I think that in that way, you foster those relationships beyond government.
And the mandate would be, one of the mandates would be to get more people from your
Exactly. I mean, the
country.
Goans will always come back,
Right.
provided Air India and Qatar Airways do not put up the prices anymore.
Right.
We will always come back to Goa. But it's actually telling other people about Goa. Everyone knows Goa, but actually more needs to be done. And I wonder whether you can give us this opportunity with this great newspaper.
Sure.
And I want to pay tribute to the work that the Herald has done over 125 years. We talked about my 32 and a half years in Parliament and your 10 years plus as the editor. The fact is, 125 years is history making. And I think we should use this opportunity to leave a legacy of what people in other countries think about Goa. And I'll leave it to you and your team to decide how that's going to be. But I think the 125th anniversary is a big chance
Sure,
to
absolutely.
actually do this.
That's
Because this is a great paper that has been fearless. Of course you upset politicians. I'm a politician. I'm always upset with newspapers. It always gives me indigestion when I read, not the Herald, but other newspapers. It goes with the territory. But I think you can also play this part.
And also, what's refreshing is that in spite of new age media coming in, I do feel that print still has that gravitas,
Of course.
which binds people together, especially in Goa.
And the great thing is, even though you can have it digitally and
Right.
you've got the mobile phone,
Sure.
the fact is you always like to see it on your table.
And more than the medium, I think it's the community connect. The message of this acting as a bridge between communities
Yes,
is surpasses the medium through which we deliver. So I
absolutely.
think that this place for everybody. Before we end this lovely discussion, and thank you so much for your time and your words, I just want to touch upon the work that you've been doing for diabetes, and if you can just touch a little bit upon that, because it's so important. Because Goa is another state where people eat stuff which causes their sugar levels to rise, and it is a problem in Goa. And so anything that you say as an input will greatly help.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to raise this issue. This is now the passion for the rest of my life, not
Right.
politics. trying to combat diabetes. There's 101 million people
Mm.
in India with diabetes. Many more will get diabetes. There are millions in Goa.
Mm.
When I set up Silver Star, it was a tribute to my mother Merlin, who came from Kalanguth. She was diagnosed with diabetes at the same time as Tony Blair made me Minister for Europe. And in a sense, I was so busy doing the work of government, I didn't understand what diabetes was. And she carried on eating her Toblerone, and she carried on doing her things. She was very stressed because she was a local councillor, and I didn't look after and care for her. She died of diabetes complications. A few years later, I was opening a diabetes camp in my constituency, and I did a finger prick test. My GP rang me and said, I've got some good news for you. And I said, oh, that's good. He said, you're on the front page of the local paper with your finger, but the bad news is you've got diabetes. And it's been with me ever since. I carry a patch which tells me what my sugar levels are. It's a message really to the people of Goa. Give up sugar. I know how difficult this is. Babinka, Dodo, Kalkals, all these things. Seradora. Put the sugar on, put the sugar on. You can have a little bit of it, but then if you do this one thing after you've eaten a meal, you will bring down your sugar levels. Walk. We all sit in our cars or we get on the bus, just walk and your levels will go down. We've had a series of camps. I've just come from Thrissur in Kerala. Dhanush, the actor, came to Harrow to launch my walk. I'm doing 10 miles around the world. I've done Toronto, I've done Chicago, I've done Leicester, I've done Harrow, I've done Thrissur, and now I've done Goa. Thank you to St Jude's School in Bethel Button for joining me on that walk. But sugar is a killer. It really is. I'm sorry if you're in the sugar industry. If you've got a choice of Pepsi or Diet Pepsi, take Diet Pepsi or drink water. If you've got a choice of Red Bull or having another, don't drink it. Okay? We need to look after our health.
Sure.
Otherwise we'll end up in hospitals.
Well, we've had a lovely half an hour and, if not more, but I think every minute of it has been extremely, extremely riveting. Talking not just to the longest serving British Asian MP, but somebody with Goan roots and whose presence in the geopolitics of at least Europe has been very enriching. And one still feels that you and other Goans can do have greater opportunities to do much more than what you already have.
Do you think I could contest here if someone gave me an Indian passport?
Of course you could. You need to surrender your British passport.
No, I'm not going to do it. This is only a joke.
I understand that. But at the same time, Goa does need intelligent, educated people with commitment to service. I think that's important and that's needed in every constituency. And that's another thing I'd like to end with. I think more and more young people should come into politics with the spirit of service rather than entitlement. And I think if that happens, Goa will be a much better place. But here's hoping for better Goa, stronger relationships, and then have more diaspora champions, as you said, to get more people from other lands to come and visit this beautiful state. It's been a lovely discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right,
Thank
Honourable
you so much.
Keith Vaz.
Thank you.